Hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And so this is the first time we're going to have a professional series with Emanate. And this time we're going to touch on subjects on how to network and what are all the benefits of networking. And on top of that, we're going also to discuss the nitty-gritty of working in France. This is very much relevant, for example, for the students and also the fresh graduates who are now looking for jobs. But I would say that this is very also important even for those who have had a few years of careers, because networking is something that we want to keep building regardless of where we are at our step of the career. So we have 4 people now joining us, three speakers joining us. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. The first one is Antonio. So he is based in Paris. He is from Mexico, and he is the graduate of a PM3E from the year of 2012. At the moment, he is working as a key account manager in Siemens in Paris. He develops sales for air conditioning and heating in heating control department across France. And worked as well in several companies, even though mostly in France. And during his period in PM3E, he did like 1 semester of exchange program with the ME3 people in Stockholm. This is KTH, if I'm not mistaken, then?
Correct, yes.
And he was also the class representative of the batch of 2012. So thanks, Antonio, for being there for us.
Pleasure.
And our second speaker is Juan Morales. He's from Colombia. He recently moved to Netherlands, working with a company called Upfield, a plant-based food company, as a global engineering manager. Before that, he had been working he had been in the food industry for a lot of times. And he had experience of working in France, in the US, in Netherlands, and also in Portugal and Brazil. So experience in different environments of international environment. And he graduated in 2006. Some of you might have talked to him during this alumni meeting that we had with the IMT Atlantic. And thank you very much for joining us, Juan.
My pleasure, thanks.
And our last speaker is Nipun Abbi. He graduated in 2017. He is now working in the domain of railway signaling in France. And as the recent graduates, he is the person with the most update with the regulations of the working permit and working conditions for international students, international fresh graduates. So thanks for joining us, Nipun.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start this presentation, this webinar with probably you guys talking about networking and also what are the company's perspective about fresh graduates, what is it that we have to highlight when we want to introduce ourselves, like how to use platform and so on and so forth about networking. And we will also talk about the conditions and the regulations and the opportunities also about working in France. So I leave the floor to you. We probably start with Antonio.
Okay, let's do this. Okay.
I can share you the slide. Yeah.
Can you see it? It's fine.
Hold on. Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So networking, you have certainly already heard this term. It's kind of like a buzzword sometimes, but how can really networking help you in your career when looking for a job or just in your everyday life? Well, I'll try to go through this in a few slides. I won't take a lot of time, so let's start. So imagine that this beautiful castle that we have is your dream company. Okay, so there is a very obvious entrance, but of course it is guarded on all sides by these mean-looking guards. Sorry. So what happens when you don't have networking? So you can maybe see the beautiful princess on the top of the tower, which represents your dream job. And we also have you, armed with your skills and knowledge, which is going to battle through the guards to reach the beautiful princess. But the thing is, if you go in this way, you better be very, very good at fighting with your skills and with your knowledge. You better be the best, because otherwise it will be very difficult to reach the top of the tower. So, for example, one of the first guards, and what many companies do in this case is have online application. Whenever possible, you should try to avoid going through this because, well, to be honest, machines are a bit dumb when it is about judging people. So they will already have set parameters like how much money are you supposed to make, or if you have exactly the amount of years of experience that they ask you to, and if you don't, they basically discard you, even though you may be actually a perfect fit for the job. So in this case, when you have, for example, this kind of online applications, my recommendation will be to just analyze what they are asking, answer what they want, just to get through this barrier. And then in the interview, you can really show what are your skills, what are your values. So this is one way of doing it. Now, let's go to what happens when you have networking. So again, we have this beautiful castle. We have you with your skills and your strengths, and we have the beautiful princess on top of the tower. So in this case, let's say that you really took your time to get to know the company. You search through, for example, LinkedIn, or through your contacts with other alumni for people who were already working in that company. And then say you ask them for some information. You invited them a coffee or something, that you talked, and then you get to learn much more about this position, and you share them your interest in doing the internship in that place. So in this case, what you have basically done is to create a ladder that will allow you to climb directly to your beautiful princess. And yeah, sure, there may be an additional guard on top that you have to fight, but you definitely won't have to go through all the stages. This is by far the best way, because as I told you, when it's, for example, online application, the machine cannot really judge how good of a fit the person is, but a person working within the team can. So my advice is, whenever possible, just do your homework, check the company, check what they are doing, check who is working in there, and then just try to approach one of the persons who is already working in that company. Tell them, hey, your company is, I don't know, for example, currently I'm looking for an internship from August to December or whatever. And I would like to know more about the position that you have opened as an internship in blah, blah, blah. So do you have 20 minutes for your time so that we can grab a coffee and discuss? And the thing is, Yeah, 20 minutes, it's okay for a person, especially on the weekend. Maybe they are very busy. Maybe they'll tell you no, but chances are they'll tell you yes. And then you can really get to know more about the company, more about the internal structure. How does it work? Who are the decision makers? How does it really work inside the company, so that you can tailor your application in a much better way to the specific position that you are aiming to. And this is why networking is really vital. But then again, how to do it correctly. As I mentioned, if you are just trying to go through a random email or a random message on LinkedIn, that is not enough. You need to really be face to face with the other person. You need to really connect. You need to understand the company culture. You need to understand the other person as well that you have in front of you. What are the motivations? What are they really looking for in this position? And how do you fit in there? In this way, you have increased your chances maybe tenfold. You just get out of the lot of the people that are just applying through conventional means, and you really get to be on the top of the list. Now, one thing that is very important, especially in France, but in other countries as well, is to do follow-up emails. So don't just stay on this initial encounter and then say, hey, yeah, it was very nice. I talked to them. Now I'll go back to my life and I forget that ever happened. No. And you should really try to keep the contact. After you met them, just write an email thanking them about what you have, what they have told you, about all the tips all these other tips that you have received. And then maybe, I don't know, send them some interesting information that you have found, or just something that keeps them value, something that shows that you can also help them. It's not only one way. So in this way, you keep the contact, and you have really built a bridge, not only in that company, but into all that person's network. So it is very important to really do the follow-up. Now, another thing for which networking is very important is to understand the internal company politics. So once you start really working, or for those who have already worked, you know that especially in very big, in the big companies, there are these power games, right, between the one of the bosses that wants to get a position or wants to really accomplish a project, looking for a bigger position, and so on. And networking allows you to really be able to visualize how these politics work, and to be able to surround yourself with people that will help you to get the work done. Because what happens also is that whenever politics intervene, there may be for increasing the efficiency of the company or to decrease it. So there will be people that will be trying to push you down, to push down your work, and to make less effort and earn more money. So your goal should be to surround yourself, to do your networking with people who are looking at the same objective that you are, which will be to really get the job done, to advance. And this is very important. Because if you say, yeah, I'm just gonna do my job and forget about politics, that's fine. But there will be a moment when you realize that the job will get done much faster when you are surrounded by the right people. So what about the tools? The tools to make this networking work. So I mentioned before LinkedIn. That is my preferred network, social network in this case, because it is really useful to understand where is the person situated inside the company that you are aiming for. Also, it allows you to see when you are, for example, job hunting, and you can click on the company and just go to the jobs. And usually companies advertise jobs nowadays in this network. So you can really do your list of companies, your preferred companies, and then go in LinkedIn through all of them and see all the offers that they have. So for me, this is very, very useful. Since we are also, at least most of us, international students, it is very useful to have a LinkedIn profile tailored to all the languages that you can master, or the countries that you are going to apply with or apply to. In this way, they can see that you are serious about the position, that you master the subject that you are going to handle, and yeah, just overall improve your position, your candidacy to this job position. Finally, I want to give my opinion on all these ways to connect to other people. For example, in conferences are good if you get the chance to talk to the speaker after the conference. Otherwise, it's not that good for networking. And I will say, yeah, if you are just going to go to the conferences and then go home, forget it. That is not the aim when you want to do networking. The conference could be very interesting, but the most valuable thing that you could get sometimes is after the conference, after the talk, when you can really interact with people who are interested by the same subject, and that also are maybe have technical knowledge or specific knowledge that will be crucial for your activity. About job forums. To be honest, I don't like them very much. They are good in order to know what are the companies that are there, what do they do, what kind of opportunities do they offer. But it's like going back again to this castle reference in the first slide, right? So there will be a lot of people which will be applying to the same job that they are advertising, and to be honest, it will be very difficult to get out of the lot just in a job forum. You may have an amazing CV, but they will receive probably 100 CVs. For me, this is not the way to go if you want to get an upper hand in job applications. A third very important tool is the alumni network. Because in here, as I told you, you can really go through and see who is currently working in that company. You can ask them what is their experience, what do they think, to understand what are the real needs, who is the real decision maker, and then improve your chances of getting the position, or just understanding the company better, which will help you to get the job done in a better way. So yeah, for me, this was my presentation, my initial presentation. I hope it was useful. So now we go. Well, as to I let you continue.
Very much, Antonio, for the insights. Like the castle analogy really helps us understand like how to actually aim what we want to reach. So yeah, we need to get the right people to get us the ladder. So,
exactly.
Yeah, and the next presentation I will let Juan presenting from your overview about the networking. So if you want to also share your slides with me.
Okay. You can hear me okay still?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. And can you see my presentation there? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So continuing the message from Antonio, There's something very important when you go to events. First of all, I completely agree with the job fairs. And I mentioned that when we talked to the class a couple months ago. I'm not sure that's like a Hunger Games that usually doesn't get very far. So I'd rather go to events like seminars, conferences, exhibitions, expos. But it's very important, first of all, to know what is the objective of the event. Is it a sales event? Is it a research event? Is it a what is it, and what do you want to get out? Have that very clear, and how much can you get out? There are some events that are excellent to know what are the latest trends in industries, but those are more showrooms, let's say, and you're going to find salespeople. They're not interested in looking for candidates, let's say, or less open because they're there to sell. So be mindful of that and be mindful of what you can get. Some events can be very, very large. And it's good if you have done your research on time to narrow down what are the companies that you want to visit and prepare your logistics. Some exhibitions are in really large halls, and I know some people that wait until the day of the event to see who's there, and they spend half of the day trying to figure out even where to go because they're very big. So prepare your logistics, prepare how you're going to manage your time there. And of course, extremely important, do your research on the companies and the people. Right now, we're talking about LinkedIn. I think, to my knowledge, there's not a better professional networking tool than LinkedIn. So you have the chance to look at the companies, look at the individuals, and maybe even see if you can contact the people in advance to tell them, hey, I would like to see you there and I would like to speak to you, or I'll come to your booth, or contact the presenters or at seminars. And then you can see what are the specific areas of your interest and see if you can find someone. And then also after you've talked to them, after you've entered in contact with them, see how can they know you? How can they know who you are? How will people contact you? Do you have business cards? Do you have already a LinkedIn contact established? It's very important to them to have you on the radar. So let's say that now I'm going to switch a little bit because there was a question of what is the perception or the expectation of experienced professionals when they're in front of students. First of all, if you're in France and you mentioned that you have a master's degree from IMT, or some people that are, let's say, older that have not kept up with the name you mentioned, École des Mines, that's already all you have to do. Okay, so you're already halfway through, and you don't have to say anything else because that already puts you in a category in their head, which is a very good place to be. So if you're in France, that's one of the first things that you have to mention, because people will recognize where you're coming from and will already put you in a different category. I have encountered many candidates for jobs, and one of the things that I find as a struggle with people, or as a very good skill, is to have a clear career motivation and what is the domain that they want to work on. Some people don't have those ideas very clear. They don't have a motivation. They cannot come to interviews or approach you with questions, kind of like not knowing what they want to do, or even worse, they're willing to do anything. And that doesn't work at all. There's something that has to motivate you, and there are domains that motivate you more than others. Are you more into research? Are you more into engineering, project management? Are you even more into sales related to energy topics? There has to be something that motivates you more than other things, and that's good to know, because if that's the wrong person to talk to, at least that person will be able to tell you who to talk to. And that's very appreciated, that at least you're clear with what you want. What are you looking for? And when you talk to people and you're trying to sell yourself, just be honest, be specific, be humble, but be very clear. Why is that company of interest? Why are you good? And why can you work together? Why you and the company can have a benefit without being cheesy, without any phrases that come out of that you look up on the internet. Just be yourself. But that shows that you have done your research and that you know what you want and what you're expecting. And very important, there are people that come into when they're in front of someone, either on an interview or even in when they're talking to them in a different kind of setup. It's like they're there ready to be answering questions, and that's not the way to go. The most important is that if you're talking to the person that has you going to that person works for your ideal company or your dream company, you need to find out if that's really your dream company. You really need to know if that's the job that you want or that's the environment that you want to work on. And so it's very important that you ask a lot of questions. Whatever you find on the internet, okay, that's fine. But all the websites of every company are beautiful and very interesting. So that makes you want to work for all of them. But it's very different when you talk to people. So do your research. And there's a very good resource, which is Glassdoor. And I found that it's, let's say, mostly accurate in opinions. They are anonymous opinions of people regarding companies. So you can go there and do some research of people that have worked in the companies or are working in the companies, and they tell you, listen, this company is great, but the culture is not so great, or the culture is great, but the pay is not good. I mean, you can find a lot of information there in preparation to your interviews or your conversations with people. There was another topic about how to approach people on LinkedIn and how to follow up. So if you're going to contact someone on LinkedIn out of nowhere, you might as well just tell them what you're looking for. So you can receive some invitations from people, and then you can see what is the profile of that person. You can say, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then they contact you and they're forgotten because, okay, they didn't tell you anything. Tell them, hey, I'm contacting you because of this or that. I want company information. I want information of a job, on a job posting. I need to know who to contact because I like your company, but I don't know who is the right person. Just be open and tell people why you're trying to link with them. And it's even better if you link it with something in common. Hey, I see that you're working on this project, or you worked on, or you were in this conference, or hey, you work in another school in France. So try to put something in common, because that gives people is more likelihood to create that interest in the others to accept it. I mentioned LinkedIn Premium there because that gives you direct access to some people. So that means that you don't have to wait for an invitation. You can send what they call an email. So that means that the person doesn't have to be a contact to receive a message from you. But be very careful with that, because that can be very overwhelming and not seen as respectful by some individuals, especially when you deal with human resources and you try to ask for jobs. So be careful with that. It is a great tool to get in contact with people directly, but you have to be cautious about how to approach certain individuals when you're specifically talking about a job. So just some caution there. And I liked what Antonio said. Follow up rapidly with a phone conversation. If you can meet the person, even better, a coffee or something, but get in the person's radar. If you connect with someone on LinkedIn, or if you connect with someone that you met at someone you talked to at a conference or something like that, follow up, an email, phone, something, because you want to get on that person's radar. And there's also, I mean, that also shows your interest and how serious you are about the time they spend with you. Keep in mind that in some events, any time they spend with you, for them is an investment. It's an investment for you. So if that was worth it, show it with a follow-up communication. And then some do's and don'ts. In general, keep your profile up to date and match it with your CV. Nowadays, a lot more companies are allowing job applications through LinkedIn. So you might as well just copy what you have there. It shows consistency. Actually, that's something that I had myself as a feedback from a recruiter once that looked at my profile, contacted me for a job, and said, "Listen, your LinkedIn doesn't really match your CV. Your LinkedIn doesn't have a lot of information." So that's actually something that I'm telling you, and I'm not the role model for that, but I'm telling you that is important. Show what you have done. A lot of people in LinkedIn, like me, let's say, we put, okay, this was my role, but you don't know what you accomplished. What did you do? What made you different? And a lot of recruiters look at that. Let's say I'm a little bit more comfortable now because let's say I've had more experience, and now I have, through my network, let's say I've had some jobs, or the current job that I have. So I'm not too worried about my LinkedIn profile. But when you're looking for jobs, it's important for people to see, okay, you were even an intern engineer at a company. Yeah, but what did you do? What did you accomplish? The reference part on LinkedIn is really powerful. Ask people to put references about yourself. And it doesn't matter if it was a summer job working as a football coach for a team. People look at that a lot because it says something about you and about how you are and about your personality, and that's very important. So it doesn't have to be a reference from a CEO of a company. It can be anything, but people look at that. So networking, following up on what Antonio said, is not only to land a job. So you have to nurture it, because it's also for your personal development. It's also for your education, for how can you contribute also to your network. So it's very important that you nurture the people that you have. Don't be discouraged by non-responsive or negative responses. That happens. I mean, I used LinkedIn Premium for a while, and that's when I learned that you have to be very, very conscious, because I sent an email about a job to a human resources person, and then the response was very negative. They actually did not appreciate that. So, okay, that's a lesson learned, and move on. And that goes with that. Don't overwhelm people. If someone is not responding, okay, maybe a second message, no response. Okay, that's it. No more, because some people also use LinkedIn but are not as open as others. And it's not about the quantity of contacts; it's about the quality. So that goes to the nurturing of your networking, and how can you contribute to them, and how can they contribute to you. So that's what I have, and looking forward to your questions.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation, Juan. If I can summarize, the key takeaway is actually here: before you go to any networking activities, do the homework, do the research of the company, of the objective of the events, and to make our time more efficient and the networking even more positive. And also really how to use LinkedIn in a more efficient way to get reference. And that's where the initial, even like the networking before, is even more important. Yeah, well, thank you so much. And we will follow up with the third presentation. And this one is going to focus more about the working environment in France. And yeah, I leave the floor to Nipun. If you want to share.
Thank you so much. Please tell me when you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about working in France as an étranger, but before I go there, I just would really like to back up on some points that Antonio and Juan talked about. LinkedIn. The most important point about LinkedIn, and never forget it, use LinkedIn only for networking. I've seen people using LinkedIn for what all and what not, using LinkedIn as Facebook. Just don't do it. Talking about job fairs, it is true. Job fairs, most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, do not help people. Each stall has 1,000 candidates. If you ever ended up in a job fair with big companies, for example, SNCF or I do not know EDF, you see 100 people lining up. On the other hand, it's really paradoxical because I have got my job and everything in the past due to job fairs. But you might want to go to some selective job fairs, really some selective job fairs, which are really the more important one, the big one, just to know about the industries and what they are doing more than submitting a CV, because that sometimes really talking to people about what industries are doing, what they are doing, really helps. But before you go to anywhere, a conference, a job fair, anything, do your research. Just don't go there because a friend sent you an email one evening before that there's a job fair in Paris. So, well, let's go. Don't do that. Do your research. Know what to do. Know what you're going for. You can end up in a job fair with 1,000 companies. There's no point roaming around with a map of the hall, not knowing where to go. And when you go meeting people for networking or when you're in interview, always talk about what you did and what you did. How is it going to help you to do what the job is about? Even if it's not about numbers, even if it's not about results, talk about, for example, I do not know. I worked in a project in IMT Atlantic for wastewater management, and I managed the interface between the technicians and students from 5 different nationalities. It is something you did. It is something that carries value. So always talk about something you did, even if it's not numbers, even if it's not results. Link it to what the job is about. So don't make it about what I can do. Yes, of course, that's important, but also make it about what I did and how I can use it to do what is needed to be done. That's really important. The next point: never ever scared to be talk. Never ever be scared to talk. Excuse me. Never ever be scared to talk, because if you're not talking to people, you are not making a network. You're not getting a job anyway. So you better do it. You better talk to people. It's better to be rejected. It's better to get a no than not have than not try, because in the end, both ways, it's a no. So it's better to try and have a no from someone. And don't hold on to a gone opportunity. I see a lot of people who go for apply for jobs they really love, who end up in interviews for jobs they really love, and in the end they do not get it. Don't hold on to it. There is always another opportunity. In France, in Europe, there are a lot of opportunities. There is always another one. Always look ahead. Never learn from what happened. Learn from what went wrong, but never hold on to it. Never hold on to I lost the job of my dreams, and that's the end. It's never the end. I can confirm. So that's just a bit. I just wanted to say some points on what Antonio and Juan talked about. And now, once you have the network, once you have the opportunity, once you have the job, there is really a really important part: how to work in France, because this is something that could block everything that you have built upon, all the network, all the research, everything. So it's really important to know how the administration, how the regulations and everything works beforehand, than to fall in a situation that you don't know what to do and you leave everything on the company in the end. So I will be just major topics. The first one: till the middle of this year, till May 2019, the government or the prefecture used to deliver you a permit that is called an APS, Authorisation Provisoire de Séjour, which allowed you to live in France for a year and search for a job. And you could work 964 hours in a year, or 60% of the maximum allowed time in a year. And under an APS, you had an obligation to do what you call a changement de statut, which we will talk about in some slide, within 15 days of a signature of a CDI or CDD that is longer than 964 hours. Basically, they gave you a document which allowed you to search for a job, and most of the companies, I think, today know what an APS is. So you just said, yes, you have an APS, and they knew that they had to do a process. This year, since May, there has been a significant change in regulations. From my point of view, in favor of students. So if you graduate now after May 2019, you do not get an APS anymore. You get what is called a carte de séjour recherche d'emploi, which removes the limitation on the number of hours you work in a year, and it removes the obligation to do changement de statut before the expiration of the card. And this is really, really important, these 2 points, because this means today I graduate, I can get a carte de séjour recherche d'emploi. I have the right to work in France with any company I want, and I go to a company I work. It gives me time to gain experience. It gives me time to earn some money, but it also gives me time to know what I like to do, what I don't like to do. So I'm not stuck with a job. If I really love the job and I want to continue, I go to the prefecture and I say I want to do changement de statut, and I continue the process as it used to be before. If I me really the time to change my atmosphere, to change a job, get a new job, do a new network, and be happy with what I have, and then do the process of becoming a salarié in France. And so this is the biggest change in regulation that has happened in 2016 for international students. Now, the second point is, you have an APA, you have a carte de séjour recherche d'emploi, you go to, you go to APEC or you go to Monster and you put on your CV. You are going to get a call from a lot of companies which we call consulting in France. What are these consulting companies? These are companies that help firms carry out specific projects, which can be in the short term or for long-term operational needs. For a young engineer, for a young professional, the world of consulting could be a really good stepping point into getting some work experience, into getting experience in the domain you like, into projects you like. Young professionals. It's because these consultancies do projects on a variety of scale, everything from renewable energy to oil and gas to planning management to risk management to project management, and even their consultancies for business consultancy. You have heard names of big consultancies like E&Y, PwC, but this is not the same group. These are really companies that work for specific domains. I know that I came to know that some of you are really interested in oil and gas. These are some of them companies like Vulcan Engineering or GAP work a lot with oil and gas, for example. And they can really be the first step into entering a professional life in France, because they really help you for the first 2-3 years of your life to gain experience with the domain and the project you really like to work in. At the same time, it also teaches you, do you like this domain or not? Because I might like a domain, but when I start working in the domain, I'm not really sure anymore. Maybe I want to try something else. That is the advantage of consultancies. It gives you the margin of maneuver when you are not sure of what to do. But there are advantages and disadvantages of this world. The advantages are that the projects are around multiple domains, like I said, and it's really good opportunity for young professionals. And the recruitment processes for some of the people, and I know this is not an ideal situation to be in, to want a recruitment process that is fast, but it can be sometimes important, especially when you are on a temporary permit and your permit is coming to an end. The recruitment processes generally are really fast, are faster than processes for bigger companies. The disadvantage is that these companies have a higher HR turnover, which means that the number of recruitments and the number of people leaving the company is very high, which can sometimes, a lot of time, demoralize people. And negotiations can be difficult. One big advice, always negotiate. There is always a room to negotiate with consultancies, because you have to remember they have a huge margin in what they earn. Always negotiate, always force them to take into account the work experience you have, even if it's not in France, even if it's not in Europe, even if it's an internship. These experiences do count, and so make sure that these companies do count them. Especially for young professionals who have 1 year with the carte de séjour in their hand, Do not get hired just because you want a job. Get hired because the project interests you. Because the salary might be really good, but after 2 months, having a high salary doesn't help anymore. You get frustrated. You get up in the morning. You don't want to go to work. So always emphasize on the project, never on other things. Well, yes, the culture of the company and everything, yes, but never on things that make you happy for a couple of months and not after that. Moving on, I think this is something that probably most of you are familiar with, but I will just I saw that some people wanted to know about the contracts or the type of contracts in France, so I will go through it really fast. In France today, there are two major type of contracts: the CDI and the CDD. And I think most of you know a CDI has no end and is the most common contract when a company hires you today. CDD is for a specific duration for a specific project. Be careful, a CDD can only be extended once, so that means you can have only 2 CDDs with the same company, one after the other, and the maximum duration is 18 months. Sometimes companies push it. Be careful. If there is an audit tomorrow, even you will be fined, or you will be liable for doing a CDD more than 18 months. It's not only a company. The third contract that is becoming more and more popular, a nice contract, is what you call a CDIC, Contrat Indéterminé de Chantier, which was mostly made for people who used to work in chantier, who used to work in construction because the projects had a deadline. But these are more and more used by big companies, and especially because it's really easy for companies to put an end to the contract within the first 2 years. Be careful. There are not many companies who do it, but there are more and more. And really be careful before signing this contract, which basically means that if the project that you're doing does not exist anymore tomorrow, your contract doesn't exist anymore tomorrow. So it might be something you might want to think about. The next topic is the next subject is what all of us who are étrangers did one point in our life, and what all of you who are étrangers, who are international students, will do one point if you find a work in France, is the famous changement de statut. So at the end of your carte de séjour, recherche d'emploi, you will be asked by the prefecture to ask for one of the 3 cartes de séjour. Carte de séjour temporaire salarié, temporaire travaillé, ou passeport talent, which will depend on the type of contract you have and the salary you get. So, just in really brief, if you have a CDD, you will get a carte de séjour travailleur temporaire, which is mandated by law. If you have a CDI, you might get one of the 2 cartes de séjour, that is temporaire salarié, which is valid for 1 year, but is renewed automatically after 1 year to 4 years if you are still employed by the same company, or passeport talent, which is directly valid for 4 years. The difference between the two is that a passeport talent to an international student who has a master in France, whose salary is higher than 36,600 euros gross annually. That's a really important figure you might want to remember something. So when you want to do changement de statut, you submit a dossier at the prefecture of your residence. So for example, if you work in Paris, but you live in another department around Paris, like department Haute de Seine 92, you will submit the documents in the prefecture of the department of your residence. And the biggest advantage with changement de statut is that the dossier is not contestable by the state. What does it mean? It means that when you submit a dossier for changement de statut, the state cannot refuse it as long as the job is related with the degree. And this is a sentence which is open to interpretation. But what it really means that a job is related to degree is that when you have a degree in PM3 or have a master in project management for environment and energy, you are not under the obligation to work only in project management or in energy or in environment, but you cannot go and work in a boulangerie tomorrow. So it has to be something that is really related. It can be project management. For example, I work with project management in railways. I know people who work in Bureau d'Etudes for nuclear or Bureau d'Etudes for oil and gas, and it, or buildings and constructions and things like this, which are related to your degree. It's related to engineering. It's related to management. But you cannot go tomorrow and submit a dossier saying I'm working as a boulanger. I'm working in a boulangerie. So you have to be really careful not to take a job which is completely out of senses. But as long as it's a job that's related to your experience, is related to engineering, to management, the state is not going to refuse your dossier. On the other hand, the process could vary between 3 weeks and 10 months depending on the prefecture. So there are prefectures in this country which are really fast. Unfortunately, if you live in the Parisian region, you should be ready to at least wait 5 or 6 months before the dossier is done. On the other hand, the advantage is that by law, you are not required to wait to start your job before this process is done. So as soon as you sign a contract, you have the right to start working in a CDI or in a CDD, and while waiting that your procedure of submitting the statute is done by the prefecture. So it's just an administrative obligation. It doesn't stop you from working or doesn't stop you from start working before your dossier is approved. And on the other hand, remember, both the company and you pay a tax for this process. Your tax is around 269 euros, which is supposed to be reduced from next year to around 69 euros. So let's hope that that happens. And your company pays a tax too. Remember, your company cannot ask you to pay the tax that it pays for you. It is not legal. It is something that is really, really dangerous. A lot of companies try to do it, but some companies I know try to do it, refuse it. Never be ready to pay tax on behalf of your company. And just to end it, a lot of people ask, is it important to speak French in France? It's a really paradoxical question for the simple thing that you do not need to speak French to work in jobs that are in foreign languages. I see foreign languages because it can be in Spanish, in Portuguese, in English, not necessarily only English. But employers do have a tendency to prefer someone who speaks French because they see it as making it easier for people to integrate in teams. And integration in teams is seen as something really, really important, something really, really, really big in France. So French certainly makes your job search easier. It will certainly make you get much more calls than you would get otherwise. But and not get job in France if you do not speak French. There is no obligation for you to speak French to get a job. And just to end it, so who, as an international student, who is your best friend? Remember, your best friend is the old alumni working in Europe and the Service Public Helpline in France. And why I say Service Public Helpline in France? Because a lot of times when you're going to get a job, you do not foresee it. You will need help from the administration for thing A or thing B or thing C. And this is the helpline that is going to help you because it is the official site of the Ministry of Interior, and everything it says, it is capable of giving you the number of legal text and sending you email with the responses and stuff which have a legal value. So if something happens with the prefecture or they do not agree, the word of the service public always pertains above the prefecture. And so a lot of times when you have administration questions, service public is going to help you. So don't hesitate to contact your alumni for any questions from alumni, from networking to job search to internships to questions that are about administration, because in the end we never foresee it, but it's the administration things that frustrate you the most. And so I will really thank you for your time, and I will hand it over to Emanate.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It is indeed like we sometimes want to work in France, but then the problem comes with the administrations. We're not used to this, and they give us like the list of things to provide or the steps of things to do, and that is something that sometimes frustrates us even before we actually go for the interviews. So yeah, well, I hope the presentations from the three speakers have helped us to understand more about networking and how to network, and also about how to work in France as a beginning. If it gets too complicated, I totally understand that to graduates, just for you to know. And now we open for the question and answers. So whoever you are, if you are joining in YouTube, we already have a few questions from Ina here, but then I also invite others to, don't hesitate to submit your questions on YouTube, and we will try to answer as much as we can over here. And in the meantime, we will also answer the questions that have been posted by the previous by the students in the previous forum. So let's go to answer the Ina here. I'm new to this platform. Can you guys read the comments here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So so Ina has a question because she's coming from from Ukraine, and she asked how to speak about your visa situation when you are already outside of the EU, and you will need working visa or. So probably the question would be, should I mention it? Should I not mention it? When is it the time probably when you have to be open about your visa situation? And because exactly what he said, she had several situations at the interviews when they heard that she will need a working permit, but then that's the end. I mean, actually, this is also Do you have any comments or opinion on this?
In my experience, you should try to answer this question only when they already know that they want you. So if you go, well, they can anyway figure out from your nationality, and they will ask the question eventually. You should not actively look to get information from your side until until the company knows that you are the one that they want for the job. Because in this case, they will be able to go the extra mile to get you the work permit. If they ask you this on the first interview, it's probably a sign that it could go both ways. If it's a big company, they will be used to it, and if they really want you, they will go for it. But if it's a small company, the chances are that if they ask you this on the first interview, it reduces your options very much. So
when the question comes up, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. But I would leave it until they ask, like Antonio said. Don't mention it. Don't bring it forward. Unless there was a specific mention of that in the job description, which then will make you look very bad, because then you're wasting their time. But if there's no mention, don't mention it. And the time will come when the conversation has to come up, and then you'll have to say, I'll need a permit. But at that moment, hopefully, they'll like you so much that they say, okay, well, that's a requirement for this candidate. But maybe they're already foreseeing some of that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything to add, Nipun?
Yes, well, I would like to add anything. You say you're from ME3 2017, 2019. So I will really be interested to know where you did your third semester, because it is important to know where you actually have the right to get a visa by default to stay and search for a job. Technically, for Erasmus program, you can search for a job or get a visa, extended visa to stay, to search for a job from the country that is your last host. So if it was Sweden, it will probably be Sweden. If it was France, it will most probably be France. On the other hand, avoid answering this question or mentioning this point to people who are not HR. Always avoid it. Because if you take it up with people who are operational or who are managers, they are not aware how these processes work, and people are generally scared to get a working permit only because most of the time it takes time, and most of the time it's a long process. So only speak about it if you speak about it with people who are HR, because they know how the process works. On the other hand, before going to the interview, know how the process works in that country, because even if you do not have to answer it in the end, it's always better to know it in advance how things work than to find yourself in a situation where you cannot defend yourself against what the company says. So for me, that will be the recommendation. And on the other hand, I have not, as you're an ME3 student, yes, Sweden. I see that. As you're an ME3 student, you might have a right to ask for what they call an Erasmus visa in the Netherlands. If you can do it, that's very advantageous, and that opens a lot of doors of opportunities in Netherlands. Just search about it and see what you can do about it.
Okay, so Ina, I hope that answers your question, and probably that also help with the way you tailor, like everyone here, to tailor their CV, not to show something that you already is going to be a showstopper. So yeah, be as positive as you can, probably also on your CV, not to show that I'm no working permit or require a working permit. That would be already a showstopper from the very start. So the next question I would like to pass is maybe this is something a bit specific, which is, can I find a research job in Germany if I speak German? What should I do? This asked by Master One, currently a Master One student. Is there any opinion here about working in Germany? Because it's actually not our topic, but if we can address it here, that would be good.
On my batch, there were quite a few people who found a job in Germany, and some of them didn't even speak German, actually. So if you can speak German, yeah, of course, that just increases your odds of getting a job. What is good to know also is that most of the people that got these job offers were in research. So I don't know what is the kind of job that you are. Yeah, it's a research job. Yeah. So yeah, for sure you can get it. For example, look into the University of Karlsruhe. I know that we had a few graduates who are coming from there, and yeah, they know EMT. Well, maybe as they call them, they don't. But still, yeah, sure, no problem. You just have to do your homework and go for it.
Seems like we lost the moderator for a while.
I'm here.
Oh,
yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm okay. So we're back online. I'm sorry for the disruptions. Yes, there's like some internet problem here. So yes, so we were in the middle of answering something about the research job in Germany. I'm sorry. Would you want to like resume the last answers that you were giving out, Antonio?
Yeah, sure. So as I was saying, there are actually quite a few people from my batch who found a job in Germany, specifically in research. So if I were you, I would look into the University of Karlsruhe, for example. They might have some open positions, and yeah, just get close to. Well, try to get in touch with some of the people that were working in Germany at the time. You can send me a private message. Also, you can put you in contact with them. And I'm sure in other batches as well, there are people who have work as researchers in Germany. So yeah, I don't think this is a problem. Even without German, you could get.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked also like few last batch graduate with, of course, the question is, in German they accept more English speaking students, but also if you speak German there is a higher chance for working in a research company in Germany, because for him he had actually the chance, but then they went for someone else because the other person speaks better German and they are actually in contact with local stakeholders. So yeah. Okay, we should carry on to the next questions. This is like a bit generic, but probably this is interesting. So we are actually PM3 students. Maybe this student, I think probably PM3, just PM3 students, not, representing PM3E, not ME3. What are the company's general requirement for students? I mean, this is actually what skills should he enhance? What skill do we have to enhance? Because I think we know that PM3E, most of the projects, academic projects, and also the courses are quite general. So if you can actually focus on some specific skills, what would you recommend?
That is a little bit of a broad question, because it depends what kind of company also you're targeting. So, for example, when I graduated from the masters, I was looking at companies that did wind power installations in Latin America. I had an interview at Shell that was related to how to reduce emissions in a refinery, and I ended up working with a company doing energy efficiency consultancy. Okay, so three completely different companies related to energy, yes, but when you look at the application, it's completely different. And the first thing is they say, okay, you work at the school in France, like I mentioned. To them, okay, that already puts you in a category. Okay, this person has studied engineering in France. They don't care too much about the curriculum, to be honest. That's my experience. They don't really care too much what courses do you take. But then is depending on the job that they have. So do they need someone that is very good at project management? There's someone that is good at research. There's someone that is that requires really good communication skills. Those are the things that you kind of need to know from your research on the type of job. What are they looking for? So take a look at the job description. Always says, okay, these are your responsibilities, but they typically have a section of what are the skills they're looking for, and that tells you a little bit more about those things where you need to focus. If you do a research job like the one that I described in Shell, they really didn't care too much what were my project management skills or what were my communication skills. They really wanted to know how analytical I was, and if I was able to work behind a computer and crunching data and working in a lab environment and things like that. When you talk about doing wind power in Latin America, the least they care about is if I know how to model the energy production of a turbine. It's actually not related to energy at all. They're looking for someone that has good project management experience, someone that is very flexible in terms of work environment, someone that takes the initiative, someone that has, let's say, leadership, that is not afraid to work with government officials and things like that. So you see, that's a completely different requirement. So it depends what you're looking for and what are the companies or the jobs that you have in front of you.
So maybe the key message here is also to look way in advance of what kind of companies you want to work for, what kind of field you want to work for, and then probably go through already what their job offers and learn what it is that they need, right?
Yeah, I think the job description typically has that section of, it gives you already some hints of the type of things, those skills that they're looking for that are not related, that is not something that the master will have given you. It's mostly related to you, your personality, and your background.
Yeah. And I think it makes me think that we have to be also strategic, because when we are doing these PM3 academic projects, sometimes you are given opportunity, sometimes not, to choose what subjects of research or the project that we can do during those the 3 semesters. And maybe we have to be strategic as well of what project we want to work on, so that we can valorize that when we are working for the company that we want.
And that's why there are some interviews when you would say you arrive to the conclusion at the interview that this is not the job for you. That's the importance of asking a lot of questions, because it's not also what they're looking for, is also what you're looking for. So that's the opportunity to ask a million questions about the job, about the company, about your work environment. Who are you want to work with? A lot of things that people don't think about because you're in the stress. You feel the stress that I need to get a job. So you're focusing more on to be liked than to actually like the job.
Yeah. That's a very good, interesting point. Okay, we move on also. We are actually taking questions from the previous, the questions that already posted beforehand. I again invite the viewers from the live YouTube live to pose their questions. Don't hesitate to post it on the comments. Okay, we pass for the next question. Probably some of you have. Could someone do internship in his home country? I would say yes, because a few people in my batch also can do internship in their home countries, and most of them end up working in their home countries though. So maybe I can invite here, if you have any experience of your friends doing internship in home country, and what then afterwards the opportunity to come back to Europe or France for their career. Do you have any experience on that?
Well, I can speak for 2006, long time ago, but I can tell you that when I was the 3rd batch of these masters, and at the time, it was interesting because the school discouraged going back to your home country. Okay. So this was a serious problem we had, because a lot of people had already contacts established with either companies or universities who actually sponsored them to come to go to France to get this master's program. And at the time I was the the speaker of the group, of the students group, and we had a let's say a serious meeting with the school at the time to open up this route, because yes, they wanted to encourage people to stay in France, to learn French and all those things, but we said, okay, that shouldn't be the way. The way is to be open, and it's an international master. So so it ended up being that the culture around it changed a little bit, and some people ended up doing the internship at their home country, and they're still working there, even some of them that I know.
Okay.
So I think that changed after in the subsequent batches. I think that changed a little bit.
The behavior, like the tendency.
That it was more encouraged, and that it was more they were more open to accept these internships in their home countries.
Yeah, that's true. Antonio, do you have something to add, or?
So in our case, yeah, there were quite a few people that went back home to do their internship. But the thing is that you also have to have a very clear career path. Most of them ended up doing something, they went up higher on the ladder faster. But some of them wanted to come back to Europe, and that was much harder for some of these people, because once all the network, all of the contacts they had was in their home company, in their home country. So except for a few exceptions where it was an international company, where they had some headquarters in Europe, they could come back. But yeah, for for the people who went back to their home country, it was very difficult to come back to Europe.
So yeah, probably it's possible, but then the opportunity to come back to Europe is limited. Okay, I have the next question here is someone who has been working in an oil and gas, and then and he has experience actually in subsea engineering, but at the same time he wants to stay in Europe after the master, and not losing the job experience, he wants to continue doing this career after the project. So do you have any suggestions for him on how to move forward with his after maybe how to look for internship first, like what's the suggestions for his career path, I would say, if he wants to stay in oil and gas? I know that basically, for example, there's this Technip, also EPC companies that they hired a few interns from my batch. So if you're listening, then it can be one of your probably channel. And maybe Nipun also suggested. Nipun, do you have something to add maybe on this?
Well, if you want to stay in oil and gas, it might there are not a lot of EPCs. For example, you have Technip, you have Saipem. On the other hand, you have big oil and gas companies based in Paris, like Total. It might not be so difficult with 8 years of experience, if I'm not wrong, to find a good job, really good job with this company, especially in a scenario where now you can work in Europe. On the other hand, finding an internship shouldn't be complicated either, from my experience, from people I see. One of the options which I talked about earlier on could also be approaching some consultancy companies which works in a lot of oil and gas. If you do not get a direct entry point to any of these big companies, you can enter through those consultancy companies, because they work with Saipem, Technip, or Total, these three companies. So it can be a good entry point, and eventually, if it's not unheard of, these companies hiring eventually people who they like from consultancy. So I think for me there are multiple ways to enter this domain, to enter these companies in Europe.
We also have some friends who are still working in an oil and gas, and one is an EPC, and one is with a consultancy company. So if you're watching, if you're interested to know more about what could you do, you can contact us in private, and we might be able to connect you with some of our friends. And the next question is, international students get opportunities to exchange with other European countries, and what should you do? So I would allow myself to start answering this. I think the school, except for ME3 in my batch, there was no opportunity for us to do exchange study with other university. I did try to have an exchange with Germany, but the office was not really supportive on that. But I do know that the one batch before me, there was also one PM3E student who did an exchange to Stockholm. I think Saheb, his name. And maybe Antonio, you were also doing an exchange, right? When you said before.
Yeah. So in our case, there were two ME3 people who were supposed to go to Stockholm, but for personal reasons, they wanted to stay in France. So that opened up 2 slots for PM3 people to have the option to go to Stockholm. So in our case, it was one of my friends from PM3E called Ray, who's now working in BCG in San Francisco, and me, who went to KTH in Sweden. But it was because of this exchange between ME3 and PM3, let's say.
Okay. So the more M3 friends we have in our batch, probably convince them to stay in France if you want to go abroad.
That's an option, I guess.
Okay, I would like to probably pose the last question. Hold on, let me just look for which one that I have not posed. Yeah, what is your experience with you or probably your ex-camarade about a summer internship? Because there's this internship that has to take place on the 4th semester, but then in between we could also spend our summer vacations doing a summer internship. Do you have any experience on that, or your colleagues? No?
No,
Well,
that's right.
oh yes, I mean I know some people when I was recently in Danone that they did some short-term internships during the summer in where I was located in Evian. I really don't know what the link between. I don't remember where they were studying, but one of them came from an engineering school in France. I don't remember which one. So it was possible, and the company encouraged that.
Okay. So
they
from
were
the
very open.
perspective of the companies, actually these options are open. So if there is student approaching them for summer internship for 2 months, it is something that they would welcome.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking specifically for the company that I work for. I don't know if it's a trend, and I didn't discuss that with others. This company did. If you bring someone that was approaching you for that, I mean, you could bring it up to HR yourself.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's where the networking was very useful for them.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, from what I know, from what I've known by talking to other people, is that it might not be impossible, but it's not so easy to get some internships, of course, because when you're a student in a French engineering school, you have regulated internships every year. I think in the beginning you have 1 month, and then you have in the second year you need to do like 3 months or 2 months. I do not remember, and in the end it's a 6 month. But an internship in Europe is generally something that has to be regulated by a contract, which means that the company eventually has to pay for your insurance, has to pay for your mutual, has to pay A, B, C, D, and so that if it might very well be possible with companies, but it's just that you might really need to contact companies, contact people who work in companies, and talk to the HR about it, because it's really an HR issue, because it's not something that's really regulated by law how much you can do, and because they will in the end have to sign a contract.
Yeah. I can, okay, that's probably the case for France. I can speak for Switzerland. There are a lot of companies that are very welcome with internship, and there are a lot of students that are doing summer internship, but these are not paid internship. So you can come, you can gain experience, and then work with them for several short projects. But then the living and expenses, travel, everything you have to pay for yourself. But yeah, but then you gain the experience that you need. So it's a trade-off that you yourself can decide. So yeah, I think that was the last question that we need to address. I acknowledge that there are other questions that are more practical in terms of like which website I should go for looking for a job. So this kind of informations we would update it. We would update in our website. So for students who are looking, or anyone who is looking for this kind of information, this information will be available in the next week. But if you also have other things that you would want us to provide in terms of like alumni community, don't hesitate to tell us. Then we will try to accommodate your questions and then give you some feedback. So do you want to add anything before we close the session from any of you? Or
Thank you very much for organizing this session. I believe it is very valuable. I mean, when I graduated, I would have liked to have all this information on the titre de séjour and the changement de statut, because this was something that, Otherwise, you have to learn on your own, and sometimes it's very painful. So I think it's very useful to know, very good value to the students, and yeah, you should definitely keep on going with this effort. Good job on the organization.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity and the time of everyone. And just to extend the offer that if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I mean, I don't know how they can get our contact details through you, us too, I guess, but.
So on the website, we will post your details. Like we will post your LinkedIn details.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
We just like to add thank you. I think it was really important even for people who are not students because sometimes we all face roadblocks when it comes to networking. I don't think there is one step solution for anyone. Even if you have no experience or you have 10 years of experience, I think you always learn something new when it comes to networking. And yes, just don't hesitate. For everyone out there, just don't hesitate putting some effort in. Just don't be lazy to do your homework, and don't be afraid to approach people and talk to people. I mean, in the end, even if 3 out of 10 people reply in something that might help you, remember 0 out of 10 would have replied if you never approached them. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much. I found this topic like also really, really interesting. Thank you very much for your availability. I myself started my career with randomly texting, not randomly, like I know what company I want to do, I know geothermal I want to do, and I just like contacted 10 people and one person opened up the way for me. Then here I am with what I'm doing right now, what I love doing. So yeah, well, thanks a lot for being here, and for everyone who's listening, we are going to perform another webinar focused on professional development, and we might touch on other subjects. This time we touch on networking and working in France. Maybe next we are touching about the soft skills and what are we going to do during interviews? How is it working in Germany? So we will invite more speakers with their different experience and different insights. And stay tuned. Thank you so much, and have a very good afternoon. Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.